I think, Senator Bell, you are up next.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So I have some questions today, prepared with the assistance of the member for New England, Barnaby Joyce, just in relation to Csiro's and the Chiswick Research Station. So the Mayor of Uralla Shire Council wrote to the Minister in March this year advising Csiro's Agriculture and Food had proposed cutting approximately 50 staff nationally from livestock research, with the majority of those losses falling on health, welfare and genetics, the very disciplines that are the mainstay of Chiswick. That same correspondence noted that over 50% of current scientific staff at Chiswick are proposed to be made redundant, leaving the site with, in the Mayor's words, a quote, a skeleton crew. Staff at Chiswick were told by management that it is, quote, another quote here, very rare for decisions to be reversed, which doesn't really sound like genuine consultation process has taken place. It sounds like a decision's already been made. So my question is, how many full-time equivalent staff are currently employed at Chiswick, and if you could break that down by scientific, technical and administrative roles?
Senator, thank you for the question. I'll hand to Dr Taylor, but before I do, just to reiterate a comment I made previously, our change process is quite extensive and we have 6 steps in that process. We have just reached the conclusion of step 5. So it sounds like some of the commentary that you're talking about comes from much earlier steps in the process. Just to reiterate that we do take all input from across CSIRO as well as our external stakeholder groups very, very seriously. But I'll hand to Dr Taylor to go to the question.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I can give an update on the agriculture and food changes, and these were relayed in a decision town hall on the 23rd of April. So if I heard correctly, you mentioned a date in March. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes.
So this is post that number, and so where as a result of consultation, both internal and external, the net reduction total for that research unit was 49 roles. That spans multiple areas, including our food innovation work, and not all of that is related to our livestock work. So in regards to Chiswick Station, which you mentioned, there were mitigation of multiple roles there, and I will take that on notice to give you exact composition and breakdown of that.
Thank you.
However, that is a clear example that, in fact, exactly at Chiswick Station, that decision was reversed for some roles.
So how many roles and what percentage of the scientific workforce there have been or are proposed to be made redundant currently?
So there includes 54. Are you talking specifically about Chiswick, Senator?
Yes, but just on Chiswick. So
Okay.
The scientific workforce specifically, do we know how many are proposed to be made redundant there?
I'll take that on notice, Senator, because we focus on sort of the science and the capability that's required across. We have livestock research that exists at Chiswick, but also at other sites. So I'll take that on notice specifically for that site.
And then as a result, do you know what specific research programs, including animal welfare, livestock genetics and genomics, livestock health and resilience, fly strike management, virtual fencing, do you know which of those will be discontinued or reduced as a result?
I'm happy to provide more details on notice, Senator, but I do know that there were some considerations of a shift of our livestock research away from single animal focused research into managing livestock as a farming system. I think this is in line with where the industry impact is in terms of how most agribusinesses are managing livestock systems, and in recognition of the fact that Csiro'S has done work in livestock animal welfare for quite some time. That area Australia performs very strongly in terms of livestock animal welfare. Well adopted across the industry, and therefore we saw opportunities to move into other areas such as methane work, managing livestock system productivity. So that work is ongoing, and the integration of livestock systems with other agricultural systems such as crops.
So my understanding is that a senior Csiro's administrator gave an explicit public assurance at a meeting in Armidale in December of last year that Chiswick was not on the target list for closures. And now that assurance was apparently given in good faith to the community, and now what we've got just months later is that there are these viability assessments underway. So when we're sitting here, One Nation, we hear that and we regard that as sort of a serious breach of trust with the New England community. So how does Csiro sort of reconcile the public commitments that were given with the current viability assessment process, which, as staff have noted themselves, amounts to cutting most people from the site and then potentially declaring it unviable?
Again, Senator, I will say that it is my understanding that there is no analysis ongoing now about the viability of the site. That was part of the proposal and would have been mentioned in your update to March. However, that with the mitigation of staff on site, that is no longer the case. I think, in that Chiswick research station in New England, there's a fantastic partnership with the University of New England working on livestock methane work. There are strengths and capabilities in working through that area on the sustainability of Australia's livestock systems. We clearly are going to take a longer time to have a think about how best to use that work and where best to place that work. Yeah. So
the viability assessment is not going to continue. Can you rule out a closure of Chiswick? Now,
the viability assessment, that's my understanding, Senator. I'll confirm that on notice. Can I rule out the closure of Chiswick? I think, as Mr Munyad has said, we're considering our whole footprint, basically, in terms of efficiency and sustainability. And so Chiswick, along with all our other sites, will be considered in that because, we're quite determined to make sure that we use our research investments as sustainably as possible. Where sites have large impact and have unique offerings, then they remain an important part of our research portfolio. But we'll be asking that of all our sites over the next coming years.
When you say unique offerings, if you look at Chiswick, it's not just a research station because it hosts Australia's only paddock-based quarantine-regulated research facility. And we regard that as a sovereign capability. It's not something that can easily be recreated by redirecting funding to a university or contracting out to industry. The National Farmers Federation has publicly stated that Csiro has, I'll quote from them, irreplaceable sovereign facilities, and has actually urged the government to stop job losses in agriculture and food research. So it's good to hear it sounds like that facility is not about to be closed down. But yeah, so is Chiswick Australia's only paddock-based quarantine-regulated research facility?
I'd have to check that, Senator, but I don't believe so. I believe that the University of Queensland at Gatton is investing in facilities, and also I guess I would point to Csiro'S intent in this area to support the livestock industry. We have the ACDP facility in Geelong, which is actually one of 3 in the world that can do livestock biosecurity quarantine research. So, I think this speaks to a truly unique capability, and we prioritise work to the livestock industry off a range of facilities.
So, do they also do the fly strike vaccine development, or was that something that was only occurring in Chiswick?
The Geelong facility does not do the fly strike vaccine work. However, that's potentially part of our biosecurity offering, and I think something that we think is important work.
Because New England does produce some of the world's finest wool. The Mayor of Uralla has made clear that no small part of this success for the region is built on 80 years of research at Chiswick. And among one of the active programs there underway is the fly strike vaccine development. And now that was a program funded in part by Australian Wool Innovation. And my understanding is it can only be conducted at Chiswick due to its unique quarantine status. And so fly strike costs the wool industry hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and a vaccine would be transformative in assisting with that. So if Chiswick is significantly reduced or has its capacity reduced, where would that vaccine research, the fly strike vaccine research, would it continue? Where and under what arrangements?
I think you're asking a hypothetical question at the moment, Senator. So I think, I think I'll have to take that on notice, because I guess basically what I've explained is that, you know, we've made a commitment to mitigate some roles that are based at Chiswick. That allows us to continue some of the work there that we got through consultation. We learnt, and I believe that is tied to the quarantine facility, that we will continue that work. So in terms of a hypothetical question, I'm not sure exactly how I can best answer that.
Can you give any assurances that the fly strike program will continue despite, say, a reduction of roles? I think you said it was something like 50 roughly roles would be reduced, but we can...
Senator, you're talking about the total number of reductions across the Agriculture and Food Research Unit?
Right, which was not...
There is only a small number that are based at Chiswick. So, for example, you know, we are reducing a whole program of work in food innovation, which is based out of Werribee. So that's the total for the research unit, which is a substantial.